Hello people, and welcome back to part 33 of Ilos, our modded Cities Skylines build. Hope you're having a wonderful day. And thank you so much indeed for all the support on the live stream over the weekend, where we started to introduce some more rural, sort of outer-lying mini towns on the junctions of major road networks on the eastern edge of the airport. It came out really nicely. Also got another alien coven and corrupt equine Jerry policeman person in here as well, which is of course always always hilarious. So thank you for all support on them. Nice to see some sort of smaller areas developing outside of the main Margrid and downtown frames now. And speaking of developing spaces outside of those two major spaces, today's episode is going to be very much a planning and preparing episode. We're going to be doing a lot of terraforming work. We are going to be building and terraforming out the mountains and the lake of the Lake Havasu inspired area from Phoenix. Lots of Google Earth inspiration to take today, but mainly looking at the geography as opposed to road networks. But we will also be doing some road network planning, tying all of the current dead Margrid frames into the lake network, and then also bringing in some mountain road networks as well. All in this space to the southwest of the downtown, at the foot of the sort of main Ilos mountain range. Huge spaces to fill today, but a lot of it is going to be terraformed work, some really cool public transport ideas, and alongside bringing a new terraformed mountain into the very flat valley as well, which will be the first of many as we move into the outer edges of the Ilos map. We will introduce some sort of slightly smaller peaks of height within the larger Grand Valley itself. But we've mentioned we need to have a look at Google Earth for today, so let's head over to our first stop there, shall we? And welcome to the first time to Lake Havasu City, everyone. So this is a really cool part of Arizona, and a really beautiful part as well. If you haven't checked this place out, I will leave a video link down below of a channel called Living in Arizona Now, who does kind of a tour of this from Phoenix, taking a road trip. Really cool video, please go check it out. However, what we're here to take inspiration from today is the Lake Havasu itself, which actually lies in the Colorado River on the border between Arizona and California. So just big body of water, okay? We won't be replicating something to this scale, of course, because we can't really in Cities Skylines, but there's definitely ideas to be taken, including a river with an island in the middle. We will also be replicating, of course, the London Bridge, which is a really cool part. This is an actual piece of the London Bridge that was brought here and installed piece by piece in Arizona. It's a really cool bit of infrastructure. I'll throw a picture up of it on screen right now so you can sort of check out what it looks like. Just really cool bit of infrastructure and bit of history as well. And lots of nightlife and boats around this, of course. These are many more future builds to come. There's a lot of tourism around here, golf courses as well. I very much want to take inspiration of the shape of the island. We can see it has a little recessed marina bit here, little jagged pieces where again more marinas lie, and again sorts of an open natural space on the island as well. Now we won't be taking as much inspiration from Lake Havasu City, of course, because I don't have the node count to replicate nearly this mass sprawl of suburbia that goes up the sides of the mountain. But definitely in terms of the layout of the roads and the beach and how the London Bridge sits over the water, or inspiration which we can take from Google Earth, of course. And our second stop in Google Earth today is back in Phoenix. We are northeast of the downtown here. Here's the Sky Harbor Airport. And what I really wanted to look at was how a mountain sits within the valley, and we can get some really quite nice impressions here if we were to take a street view just down on this road here before we jump back into cities. We can just get an impression of how this sits within the suburb. Real nice mountain peaks within the very flat valley space. And it's something I want to bring into Ilos as well. And again, in future builds, we will definitely do some sort of southwestern nature reserve style builds over here. Maybe start taking some inspiration from places like Sedona. And we also have inspiration with the canals here as well. There is actually two canals here in Phoenix. The main canal and then the floodway right next to it, but I don't have the node count to do that, so we'll just have to deal with the one canal for right now. But I really enjoy putting these sorts of episodes together where we're doing lots of planning and terraforming and road network designs and IMT and node controller, and some really fun geography jobs in store today as well with some nice public transport designs. And before we start, I would also like you guys to leave suggestions in the comments for the name of the sort of main touristic desert oasis lake that lies within Ilos. Please do get your name suggestions down in the comments and we'll pick the top voted for next episode. Otherwise, let's do some terraforming and planning, shall we? Alright, so the first thing I want to do today is work on the terraforming. It's going to be kind of split into three separate sections this video. So when I grab the bottom of this lake right here, which is actually a river because it flows out this way, and of course has been dammed by Eggsy during the map making. So I now just want this river to start flowing out this way. So we're just going to use our level terrain tool and selecting the bottom layer of the current existing lake. And then start carving out some sort of different shapes here, right? Start carving out some islands within the river itself. And then this entire space here that is boxed in by the highways and the canals is going to become flat. So of course that's a very obvious terraforming job at the moment, but we'll come back and fix this, just give it time. And then rather than just keeping the river going at the same size here, let's reduce our brush size a touch. And then just bring in a little arm of it that follows the foot of the mountain. And that can also split off a little bit here again as well. And then just create another little island, little point of interest within the river itself. And then we'll also keep this going also through to the main river here. Again, where we can do some slightly more interesting things. Just open it all up, and then again we'll do some curvatures here. And just a little bit more interest along the banks of the river now. And then with every single one of the networks, we can just use our picker tool to find it. And then using the fine road tools force upgrades into bridges where necessary, and then also remove any networks that need to be amended here. Of course, lots of refining needs to be done during the D10 timelapse, which is fine. And then also the same with the highways over this side as well. Yes, just come into bridges. Fantastic. And then again, refinements within the terraforming to be made in certain sections. Let's go for 3 spaces here, keep it even. Wonderful. Okay. So this is all right for the time being. Now we also have the canals over here as well that I'd like to feed into the lake as well. So now let's bring in a little layer of terraforming that can help us hold some infrastructure like canals and roads and stuff. Okay, this should be good. Again, it can all be amended at a later date. Let's go ahead and grab these LA River Network canals again, which we used in our Bad Part of Town episode if you haven't seen us use these before. Really fantastic assets, go give them a try. So we'll come out with our standard, do 20, and then we'll go into a transition piece, and then we'll go to base at 20, and that should allow us to come safely down into the water. Looks like we just want to reverse that transition piece a little bit, and then we can bring these nodes down now, and then let the canal flow nicely into the lake, which should be quite nice here, I think. Okay. Again, some terraforming will be more than welcome in this space as well. We'll also sort out the terraforming here, so it's the same configuration as this one over this side. Okay. So with that in mind, I now have a general idea of how big the lake is going to be. I've got it connected into 2 existing waterways, which really added some shape and much needed texture, I think, into this immense desert that we're playing with in Ilos. So this should be quite fun. So what I'd like to do now is come ahead and grab a road network, because I know that, again, taking inspiration from Google Earth, that the little London Bridge build is going to be something that has to take priority. And I think having it sat at the end of this very long road into downtown with lots of palm-lined roads here, with the London Bridge at one end and the skyline at the other, I think it should make it quite important. This is actually the very southern Margrid frame, this one right here. So quite an important road, carries a lot of traffic through the city, and I think it'd be quite nice and thematic to have it end at the London Bridge on the island. But again, looking at Lake Havasu, we can see that, you know, things are elevated, things are embanked, not everything's totally flat on the ground, which is great, which means it's more inspiration for us. So let's bring ourselves on a elevation with this 6-lane road. Of course, specific and final road networks will be tweaked during the time lapse, but we'll discuss some sort of major ideas and frames at least today. So just going to do a touch more terraforming. This is going to allow us to, again, just hold that infrastructure before we decide exactly where the lake shore is going to lie. Letting the infrastructure decide that for us can be helpful. We'll come into the elevation here. Let's make sure we get across the road here. Have no pillar collision, we should be okay. So we'll have that there, and then we'll draw 30 units from this point. That's going to take us to that space. That should be okay. But again, it's at this point I want to actually force back down to Earth. Don't want everything to be elevated. And that should be okay there, I think. And then, of course, for the London Bridge, there's one clear choice in asset has to be the European 6-lane stone bridge in order to replicate the London Bridge in Lake Havasu. Probably to about there. This looks incredibly garish at the moment, I'm aware, but please bear with it. Okay. So I think that's going to be decent for me. It's got really nice sort of decals on it. Again, you can see the resemblances to what we saw in Google Earth and the picture that I threw up on screen with the railings here and the brickwork and the sort of stone masonry in all the sort of structures and pillars. Really cool looking asset, and we don't really use it that often, so nice to see it kind of hold a special place like this. So now I know that the water has to flow under all of these arches, so we're going to give it enough breathing room. And then we can chisel out a shoreline to our own desire and shapes once the water is flowing and the island is in. Okay, and then we'll also chisel this little bit back as well. Now, on this side, of course, I want an island to appear because this is where we are to have the bridge land, and then also our public transport network's going to land here as well. We're going to bring in a intercity train connection alongside a internal train line from the downtown. And there is metro that can be brought out here that's hooked into the mile grid. Trams can be brought in from Main Street alongside buses. We're nearby to highways as well, so intercity buses are going to be perfect. This is going to be a really fun build to put together, because, you know, kind of Ilos has been split so far, hasn't it? We've had the mile grid build. The downtown is an entire beast within itself, which of course still isn't finished yet. And then we now have the Lake Havasu area and the mountain reserves and the nature stuff, which will occupy this space. So many more fun builds to come. And we certainly have the node count for them all as well. So hope you're all looking forward to these expansions, everyone. It's really fun putting all this stuff together. So let's come back into our roads now. And I know that, again, taking a look at Google Earth, I can see that it's just a median yellow road here. And then this just comes back down to Earth. Want to select the nodes of it and make sure that it's at the same height as the bridge. And then let's go ahead and grab this road. And also keep this running at the same height for a little bit, because there are actually height differentiations on the mountain, or on the island itself, sorry. So that's something to respect. You know, it's not all at the same layer, so a lot of sort of the beachfront activity stuff takes place down on the lower beaches and the shores, and there's more sort of camping and resorts up on the mainland, or on the elevated section anyway. So again, something we can take inspiration from. And then little bits of soften, of course, to be refined during our detailing time lapse. Okay, and then different ideas can come in once the water is flowing as well. Perhaps we can carve out, again, with our smaller brush size, maybe a little island here that is sort of got some nice curvature to it. A little bit of shapeage before we drop in our water sources here. Again, just lots of bit of softening around the edge to take a touch of the sting out of them. To take the sting out of the beige, so to speak, right, I guess, at this point. And then also over here as well. Alright. Lots of softening around the harsher edges. Blend it in. And of course, detailing will help that as well at some point during today's episode. So now what we'll do is we'll come into our water sources. This is from the Extra Landscaping Tools mod, if you do not have access to this. I'm going to place in full capacity water sources at numerous points around the lake to stop the immense fast water flow that will happen here. So again, I just want the water to be at the same level as the sort of lower level beach on the island. That's really our target point today. Cool, so we'll have one there. We'll also do one here as well. And don't worry, we're going to watch this fill up together. Because this is, at least from my testing, was incredibly satisfying to see this space fill up at once. Yeah, so these rivers over here, these are going to fill up, flow into the lake, exactly like the Colorado River does, right? It kind of comes out here, widens out into the lake, then back into river, and then joins up with another network which goes out of the map for us. So really cool sort of geography work, which I very rarely do in Cities Skylines. And yeah, there's some really talented content creators with this sort of stuff as well. Sanctum Gamer is one that jumps to mind, especially with the work that he did in 5B. Okay, cool. So then we'll put in one more water source here as well. Bring it down. That's just a left click and drag up and down, by the way, to change the height if you don't know. And this should be okay for us, I think. All right, we might need one or two here, but we can refine that at a later date. All right, but otherwise, let's watch the lake fill up, and then we can have a look at some road network stuff as well. So welcome to the freshly established lake, everyone. And what an enormous difference this has made to the desert landscape, right? Having something inspired like the Colorado River flowing through a big desert valley like this. It's turned out so much nicer than I could have imagined. Just like super happy with it. And of course, all the modded terraforming tools available to us make this sort of designing and terraforming the landscape so much easier. And yeah, really, really cool. So yeah, we've got sort of the lake and the waterways terraform now. And basically what we will do during our D10 time lapse is come through and grab all of Karina's wonderful preset river detailing that she's done for us. Because, you know, it's already in your map. You know, the chances are, especially if you're on a workshop map from, you know, a good creator, then you're going to have these detailing templates in the map already for you. So a little bit of move it to grab them all over, and then we can just plop them into our somewhat naked riverbeds at the minute, because you can definitely tell a difference between them. But of course, we can do all that during our D10 time lapse, especially around the island as well. We've also chiseled out some more shapes. Again, just taking inspiration from how things sit on Google Earth at the actual island on Lake Havasu, and then also preparing for some sort of eventual nightlife speedboat marina to sit on the island with all the hotels and the resorts. And, you know, please feel free to get ideas for Lake Havasu builds now. There is a lot of potential over here, so anything you'd like to see outside of the obvious, like boat marinas and waterfronts and stuff, then this is the episode to get them in the comments. So now what I'd like to do before we start detailing up a little road network time lapse is just come through and upgrade this highway into the 4-lane yellow median road from our American Roads pack, because again I'm looking at what the highway is that passes through Lake Havasu, and it's this exact style of road. And then when we do come to a junction, so let's prepare this. We know we're probably going to have one about here, right? So let's do 10 units there. And then we'll do another 10 units out this way. And then we'll upgrade into asymmetrical here. So I think we're going to go with the 5-lane asymmetry with the junction facing, or with the asymmetry facing into the junction rather. So 3 lanes in, that should be fine. And then again, we'll move back to that road. Now they won't connect, of course, because they're kind of from different road packs, but there's IMT we can do here during our D10 time lapse to tie in our major connections. So that'll be one. This will be one entrance into the lake, of course. And then we'll also have another one on this side as well. Let's go for a road guideline snap against the canal just to establish ourselves. This seems about right, I think. We will remove this node here and then force it into a elevated upgrade of our highway section. Let's go for this one right here. There we go. Of course, final road configurations can always be amended later on, of course. Let's also do the same over here again too. Let's come back onto that elevation as we come over the canal. And then we can come back down to earth. And then we'll just let these flow and meet each other now. So I know a lot of you have commented that you do find road networks somewhat tricky, so I hope today's episode can be somewhat helpful in tying some ideas together. I think a lot of the time it just kind of comes from drawing out sort of a big arterial frame and then allowing that to plan sort of the next area. That's very much been the theme of the Mark grid. You know, we have these huge sort of big roads now that flow right through the heart of the city, and you can look all the way down them and see, you know, all this infrastructure, you know, all the way along. So, you know, I think just that's my tip for road planning is you draw out a big piece of it, let it meet another big piece, and then before you know it, everything will start interconnecting and having a nice time with everyone, won't it? Okay, again, we can refine these spaces here so they're not clipping later on, but it's the initial frame that we want for right now. And then during those individual sort of modular builds, if you like, the spaces now to develop finer road networks that hold our tourism, our golf courses, our beaches, and all of that sort of detailing around here as the Lake Havasu area begins to go out around the London Bridge. Okay, and then I think what we also want to do over here as well is allow this junction to flow out now and probably directly under this road with Anarchy, which we will need to do a touch of pillar wrangling, and then we can connect into this road guideline, and then everyone's happy. This will eventually become terraformed. We're going to talk about this during our mountain section of today's video, when we do the big land terraforming job. Okay, but I know it's going to be ever so slightly higher here. Again, it's going to give us a really nice, grander layer of depth eventually across this part of this city. Let's delete this and come off with collision because I do want the pillar to sit in the middle of the canal. Okay, and then let's go for one more elevation step. There we go, and then falls back down to ground. And then we can have this span off then in multiple directions, and it can hook into country roads. It can come right back into our frames here where we do perhaps have a touch of awkwardness. This is a great opportunity for a bit of node controller, just to shift off that blue node and then align everyone up, and then we can square off. And then that's just going to help everyone keep level, which will really help frame the canal as well, which is going to be quite an important aesthetic for this area. And it's lots more interconnectivity now. See, there's already someone choosing to take this road over here. I'm guessing to get back into the downtown eventually from here too. Of course, there's going to be train, public transport all supporting this road network as well. But this gives us a little base layer of road network frame around the edge of the lake now, which is super handy for sort of establishing exactly how we can hook the mile grid into it. So let's time up some road network. I'm just going to bring across all these arterial frames into these new networks that have appeared, and then we can tie it together. Sort of the end of the mile grid, which will be quite cute. It's going to end on a little sort of diagonal frame here to round out all the major grids, which should look quite nice again once the mountain's in and the builds are all sat around it. So let's detail up some road time lapse, and then we'll be right back. So we now have our main road network frames established, which is again just giving us a little sense of scale and positioning as to how we're going to tie the lake into the mile grid frames here. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. Of course, lots of individual builds to come through this space as well. Yeah, nowhere near finished with the main mile grid frames and Ilos. Still a lot to do there. However, what I would like to do now is start terraforming out the mountain. So I haven't really done any major terraforming projects before, so this is going to be a first attempt for me. I'm going to go ahead and grab a height of one of the mountains that came with the map. I'm thinking possibly maybe this peak here, maybe slightly lower than that. I'm going to do something rather horrendous, right? There you go. Right, this obviously looks insane at the moment, all right? This is a big old boy, but what we're really doing here is just terraforming in the mass of the mountain. There's lots to be chiseled out here, of course. So again, I'm taking inspiration from the mountains that I can see in Arizona. So I'm going to have kind of my main peak right in the middle of this landmass. Then what I'm going to do is just start sloping up towards here and then creating some larger areas of sort of slopage that can be brought in. And then we can start doing some actual softening with the old faithful soften tool, of course. Okay, let's go ahead and get some slopes in this way, push it a little bit further back from the highway. Then once I've got an established landmass, I want to just come around and soften it all with a high intensity. Couple little wiggles with the left click here and there. Right, let's go ahead and start chiseling out some peaks here as well. So I would quite like some obvious peaks. So again, I'm going to use the shift terrain types here and just sort of create a general spike in the middle of my landmass. Again, this has all been a learning process for me as well. We haven't really done any significant terraforming projects like this before. And then I'm just going to grab those new peaks with the slope tool, and then from the edge of the current slope, I'm just going to bring in a new one, right? Same again on this side. Terraform it up. And that's going to be sort of one rigid peak there. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that. And then I want to do the same thing over here again now. So I'm going to bring my brush size down. And then just create a few little, very obvious peaks, okay? I think that can be quite helpful. At least what I've found from my testing and sort of doing today's build is that, you know, being a little bit obvious with the terraforming can sometimes help. Okay, let's soften all these out. So just going to create some ridge lines and some peaks within the landmass itself. And then I also want to create some larger slopes up to this mountain as well. So let's go ahead and get these peaks up here, and then I'd like to maybe start sloping up from here and chiseling out some larger ridges that come down the mountain. Okay, but I think I'm enjoying it so far, right? It's not too bad. It's certainly a dominant beast from the lake here too. And then if we sort of sit up on the taller mountain peaks, we can definitely notice it, can't we, as sort of a larger elevation within the map itself. And of course, we will have a few of these. It won't just be the only one. Maybe a few more towards the foot of that mountain range over that side. Perhaps a couple out on these flats over this way near the airport. Definitely lots more sort of mountain terraforming to be had. Which I think will help this one settle in a little bit more as well. So what I'd like to do now is come back into my slope tool. I want to start bringing out this slope here, and again looking to expose a little bit more stone with our terraforming work. Okay, there we go, and then slightly wider brush with some more soften as well. So again, looking at Google Earth, looking at the actual shape of the mountains here in Phoenix can really help, or you know, whatever city you're taking inspiration from, can all come into play. But as a general idea and a general landmass for me to work with, I'm relatively happy with this design, I think, alright? And even from the map grid, especially, it should serve as a really wonderful sort of focal point, right, again, within sort of the larger sort of Ilos landscape. Makes a big difference, doesn't it? And I don't think it's too dissimilar from the mountains we've got here. Of course, needs a little bit more work yet to get it there. But it's certainly on its way, I think. And we can definitely tidy this up during our descent time lapse. But we have the landmass in, which is going to allow us to do some pretty cool things. Wonderful, fantastic. So let's return to the island now, because the last thing I'd like to do before we move into a descent time lapse is to introduce a little bit of public transport. So I'm going to grab one of the content creator stations, and I'm actually going to use the crossover train station hub here. Now this is a bold move for what this is going to look like. But it's an asset I haven't used before, and I just think the opportunity of layers up against the waterfront here is kind of too good to refuse. So that's what I'm going to use. Again, it's a bold move, but we'll see if it pays off. Bear with me. We're going to go back into content creator packs, then they're going to grab the high-speed rail viaduct, and then we're going to force this into an elevation. As it leaves the island on a very, very gradual descent, we will actually come back down here a touch. Okay, again, we can use Network Multi-Tool to sort out gradients. but it's a relatively modern looking bit of infrastructure. Again, we can tie it in with sort of landmass elevations now if we wanted to force it back down to the ground over here. Again, we can force it into bridges as we cross the road, and then back into the force to ground, where our soften tool can come back in. So this is a really good opportunity of sort of using layers of height and forcing layers of height into a build. If you're struggling to find them, then this is also really good for that. And then again, what we can do now is just use this landmass to connect on the other side. And then again, once we've drawn this rail line in now, let's keep it going straight the way through here. We'll come back into a bridge as we come over the canal. And then I really want to connect back down to earth as we come over. And then again, we can do this now. And then this will just give us a little intercity connection. So this is going to be an intercity line, all right? This is going to hold a connection for our intercity trains to come directly into the lake. And then the train line that lies along the bottom of the lake here again, for which I think we'll stick with the high-speed rail viaducts. Again, it's going to increase the speed of the trains as well, which is always great, but mainly an aesthetic choice for me because the other train line bridges here are a little bit kind of too industrial looking for what I'm after. Again, we want to make sure that we're saving room for boats to come under here again, which we can always do with Move It. And I think we will actually have some boats working across the water. We will also have some cable cars, I think, passing back and forth across the lake, which might be quite cool. More public transport. And we know that this line right here is the one that wants to be expanded. So we'll come in and grab the regular train line again. And then, again, we want to find a nice spot. Looks like there's sort of a natural dip in there at the mountain that we've created here. So why don't we go for that? Let's force to ground. And then we'll force to bridge as we come over the highway. Make sure we're on straight road tool here. Any little bridge inconsistencies or pillar inconsistencies rather can be moved into the middle of the highway. We can also, sort layers out here with Move It in a minute, so cars can actually clear the bridge, which will be helpful for them, you imagine. Alright, and that can come across. And again, there's so much really cool detail we can do in streams here. We've got like rural desert tracks now. A really cool theme we haven't encountered in Ilos before. Okay, and then we can sync this down. That, of course, looks insane. Let's go ahead and grab that node and set it to the same height as one of the others over here. Let's actually maybe do a touch more elevation than that, just so it looks a little more natural. And that's going to give us a train connection now through the mountain, which is going to be so cool. Really can't wait to see that in action. Again, lots of detail around there to be had as well, isn't there? Really exciting. Really, really cool. And very, very exciting indeed. All right. Cool. And then obviously there's intercity lines here as well that we can tap into. And then we'll get the passenger line flowing out of the downtown central transport hub as well. I was also considering bringing this metro line into the area too. But I think it's a little bit overkill to have tunneled metro through a mountain. I think that's much more likely to be trains. So we'll probably bring in underground metro because we've got one spare line out of the main hub over this side. And then this one also dies here, so this can be brought over. And then there's also lines, I believe. There should be, yes, there's one more over here as well, this underground metro, which comes out of the Mar grid. So no need to go overkill on the public transport just yet. But we'll certainly be using trains and metro and trams here. I did bring down the trams from Main Street during the road network episode. I have killed the power connection to the Willow Airfield, haven't I? Yes, we'll need to reinstate that before everything dies. Otherwise, that's not too bad. We've sort of terraformed in a mountain shape now. It's a rough idea, right? It wants to be, of course, very heavily terraformed yet to create some more ridge lines and whatnot. But otherwise, as a general premise, I'm pretty happy with it, has to be said. Okay, so the last thing I want to have a little look at today before sort of a main detailing time-lapse is the inclusion of a little mountain road that will eventually span out of this network here and up and into the mountain. So of course final configurations and slopages will be decided with network multi-tool, of course, and we can meander this little yellow dash medium road along more of the mountain ridges. Do some really cool things with this, alright, and of course once it's in, we will just have a very brief sample here as we draw in some very basic frames. Of course, the wonderful world of network multi-tool makes things like this so much easier now, and having Move It available as well for the height settings and so much fun stuff, right? It's going to be really cool. But let's give this a little forest brush so there's no cactus in the road. And then we'll have a little talk about with the intersection marking tool. So really cool view over the lake from here, right? You can imagine once all the infrastructure is in, and they can look back over the illuminated mile grid on their way down as well. And at certain points over this road, they will also, glimpse at the Ilos downtown as they take the mountain road into town. So really cool vibes and aesthetics up here. But what I do want to do is have some sort of network fencing on this, of course, and for that, we now have the intersection marking tool, which can do it for us. So there is a video up on the channel walking through this exact functionality. You can just scroll back just before this video and find it. But I just want to do a decorative network here, and then we're going to search for a barrier. I'm going to go for a double-sided crash barrier, I think. Yeah, that seems good to me. And then I just want to shift this now off of the network. So it's here like this, okay? That's going to be relatively sensible for what I'm after. So we use IMT's new functionality to get a double-sided crash barrier in again, which is a node network. And then what I do want to do is actually just apply this to the whole street by hitting this option here to apply to whole street. And then you'll notice now that this sound barrier now flows all the way along the mountain road without using a single node. This is so good. So good. Of course, the road cactus wants to be removed, but that'll happen during the detail time lapse. Well, there we go, right? How amazingly cool is this? Just, oh, what a game changer. So much quicker as well than having to draw it manually. Just let intersection marking tool do it for you now. Wonderful. Okay, so let's also come back into network multi-tool. We'll go for a slope function. And let's set our slope from right here down to here. There we go. We'll have that slope dictate the height of the ridge at this part of the mountain. And then we can just soften all that out. And then having that road there actually exposes a little more stone for us. And then we can just do sort of slope networks now in different parts of the road, just to help balance things out a little bit. And that exposes a little bit more of that stone sort of texture for us. And then we can just slowly climb up and meander up a sort of classic American desert mountain road now with this sound barrier on one side. And what we will do is just hook this around the back of the mountain. We can eventually feed it into a highway interchange that can exist over here because there's nothing out here yet, of course, and tie things into the little municipal airfield and the rural town that's out here. So slowly but surely we are tying Ilos together, right? But it's long projects and a lot of detailing that needs to be done to get it there, I think. Okay guys, so before we do actually detail time lapse, I've been looking at the rail network here that comes out of the bottom layer of the train station on the island, and there's something I think we can do with this. So very much in the vein of what we found out during our Main Street trams sort of node control trick that we've done here. For those that watched the video, you would know that we found an issue where we couldn't do it with train lines because bending the train into the junction would actually cause the game to read it as a broken train line. But I think we can do this the opposite way round and still have it work. So let's kind of talk through what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to use some of my asymmetrical roads here. So we've now got our 7-lane asymmetricals on a regular rail crossing. This is fine. The train line still maintains its connection. What I'd then like to do is grab the other roads that we were using and then come onto a road guideline snap here. And then let's come onto the guideline snap of the rail. And then with a 10 unit connection here, I'm also going to shift this node ever so slightly further back. There we go. And again, we'll grab this road again, snap to the guideline at a unit of 10. So it's the opposite way around of doing this that we did with the tram lines. Again, I'll leave this video link down below if anyone hasn't seen it. It's quite useful. And then what we want to do is just offset our red friend. Let's bring this back down a little bit. And then we're also going to start shifting the baby blue node and the regular blue node down toward each other over here. And then also perhaps offset our orange friend a little bit as well. Now, to my understanding and expectations, this will work as a single node train line crossing, which allows us to integrate it much more organically into the traffic light system that will be here. and then also without having two nodes so super close to each other. This should be quite an effective way of doing it, I believe. So really cool. I hope that's useful to see. I think this should be quite a nice way of integrating trains into a single junction. Of course, we'll go ahead and get some train lines hooked in, and then we'll see what we think. However, guys, that does feel like a good place for a detailing time lapse. We have a bunch of work to do, including lots of nature detailing, rocks, and a lot more terraforming just to chisel this out to make it look a little more natural, and then refine some of the grasses and overgrowth and palms and cactus that appear upon this mountain. Upgrade all of these roads here into some of them palm sections, some of them without trees, just make it look a little more sensible, but give it quite an aura of importance as it heads down towards the London Bridge out of downtown Ilos now. And of course it will respect the view over this way too. Continue our mountain road detailing, again using the intersection marking tool to dictate when and where we want these sound barriers to appear, and then lots more network multi-tool and terraforming where appropriate. Lots more terraforming this side to help bring this rock texture out. This is really what we want to see, as opposed to the paler one here. So again, just more chiseling and layering out, and we will also just have a very brief nighttime view here of the eventual views across the mile grid from the nature reserve. This place does hold a wonderful view across all of downtown Ilos with the airport, of course the downtown itself, and looking way back over the mile grid, and the sunrise from here will be absolutely incredible, I'm sure. And of course looking down upon Lake Havasu when looking south as well, across that mountain range, and all the new wide rivers that are very sort of Colorado River inspired. So lots of new ideas and themes and really interesting ideas to get involved with in today's detailing time-lapse, of course. And then generally type in existing road frames. Probably I will also come in and just draw in a general road loop based on what is on the island in Lake Havasu, just so we have just some initial frames. And don't forget, just a reminder, get those comments in down below of what builds you want to see around the edge of the lake, and indeed towards the edge of the mile grid as well. Please get suggestions in. Always happy to take your guys' ideas and implement them into the city. But otherwise, let's detail the road network and terraforming for the lake, and then we'll be right back. Okay guys, so let's have a detailing review, shall we? It's really nice to see all the Ilos train network coming alive now. He says as there's no trains moving on it. There we go, there's one. But yeah, all this sort of intercity connections that we set up ages ago, also throwing in a cargo station just to help satisfy some goods issues in the city. This will eventually, of course, receive its own little mini modular area to accommodate a little cargo station. The hill has now been totally decorated in our desert overgrowth and indeed sloped out here with a little rail crossing as the intercity rail now heads into the lake as well around this side of the mountain. Then we also have this wonderful little Ilos sign, which of course will give a little nighttime spoiler preview for. I think there's something quite special about that, isn't there? As it sits here now in the mountain within the Mar grid, especially with the road going up, and of course eventually we can do a little visitor centre up there perhaps as well with an observatory maybe, taking inspiration from LA. But yeah, huge fan of it, just super cool. Of course we'll save the final Mar grid cinematics for the cinematics today. So now the intercity line flows parallel with the main arterial road that comes out of the downtown and into the lake, and then joins up with the rest of the expanded suburban road network, where we've prepared many more frames for that mass Phoenix suburbia to come in for the residential demand, of course with individual builds and modular builds around this. And I've not really zoned up these squares here because Main Street is going to expand into this space, so there's not too much point zoning this area up, and likewise with the very northern tiles, this will more likely become kind of golf course space and other sort of Mar grid projects, so again, to be filled out once we arrive at those. The lakes and the beaches have been detailed and rocked up, and of course we'll come in with hotels and marinas here preparing things like that. With some keys and little bits of terraforming, and a huge thank you to Karina. I had so many preset palettes that I could just steal from around the map for detail on the islands and the shores, so just massive shout out for her for spending all the time in the world finding out all these detailing palettes that are authentic to Arizona, so thank you so much, Governor, I really appreciate you. Also just thrown in the beginnings of a small town with the American Eclectic theme, which I think is really appropriate because they kind of start off in these smaller development stages, so it's almost like this is a brand new town being set up, and then just clusters of services parks just to keep them happy until we can get over here and do something proper with them. And then also an intercity station for buses over here too, which again, this is one where we can draw our own bus lines out, and we'll make sure that the grid is fully linked in with buses serving everyone back into to the lake, so you know, lots more public transport to be had as well, alongside the inclusion of the cable car which we mentioned during the episode too. This now sort of just flows across the lake, and Tuesday kept kind of one side of the bridge open and nice, and then we've got quite a almost industrial public transport side of it here that helps serve all the tourism that will eventually be in this area, of course. And then we've also got a unique building here as well, just plopped down so we can attract people to the train station, but of course it will be changed once we come over here. And a huge fan of the bullet trains leaving the island. I think we've got away with the aesthetic. It's quite modern, and I'm happy with it. I think. So this comes across into one of the content creator stations over here, and then links off in bridges, and then crosses over the mountain road, and then across the canals over here as well, which are now being fed by a couple of water drain pipes under the bridge here, which I think blends into the infrastructure quite well. So super happy with that. And then we've just got a single little highway country slip here back onto the highway. I didn't want to do anything serious with a major interchange so close to, you know, this big sort of curvy, beautiful stack that Eggs has put together. So we'll just do something a little simple, just a little slip road that merges back onto the highway, which will just siphon a little bit of traffic out of the rest of the interchanges. It's all about those little connections, you know. And then this just comes back across the canal, where we have some really nice kind of Southwest American vibes developing now. Especially here with the power lines and the canals and the you know, the road pillars all going over it. It's really coming together. I'm very happy with the developments that we've made in this part of Ilos today. And then of course the appropriate placement of a billboard as welcome to the city, as the Cities Skylines sits behind it with this big long road ahead of you heading down into it. So just the infrastructure convergence here, the parallel lines with the intercity trains coming and going here as well. And of course, there'll only become more trains as this area grows out and people begin to use the public transport connections in this really nice sort of desert oasis valley that now sits within Ilos. That's been created by this new landmass over here. And then we've also come through here with some tasteful forest brush alongside some chain link fencing. And this is nearby to our single train node, which is fully working now. The intercity trains are arriving on the bottom platform there. So yeah, really cool, nice sort of new infrastructure designs that we can play with in Ilos. And this is an entirely different part of the map to play with now. So many more vibes. Really getting away from the Glendale mile grid that we've spent so long in Ilos constructing. It's time to get a little more sort of free form now and enjoy some waterfronts and tourism. And many exciting builds to be had here, everyone. It's an exciting time to look forward to in Ilos. And then our mountain road now sits in properly with proper terraforming around it. And some nice slopes and gullies down into these mountains below. And yeah, again, just huge love for that new intersection marking functionality. And what a tremendous view across to the Ilos downtown and Margrid's here, right? And once the Margrid really sprawls up to the foot of the mountain, and that will create such a cool nighttime aesthetic for us as the light just ends as the mountains rise up out of the valley. So something to look forward to again with our nighttime cinematics. However, guys, that is going to do it for today. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed, likes, comments and shares below really help me out. Even so much if you haven't enjoyed it, then leave me a dislike as well. Really happy with today's developments. Lots of different projects, including road network preparations, which have come together really nicely. Some new node controller tricks with the rail. Some terraforming, including building a lake and interconnecting river systems and trying to make it look as natural as possible. Alongside some much larger terraforming projects like bringing a mountain into the map for the first time. And I think for my first attempt, it's not too bad. Super happy with this little Ilos sign up on the hill as well. I will also include some cinematics from the rest of the Margrid here so you can see how the new mountain fits into the skyline. So please do hang around for them. This episode took a long time to produce, so if you have enjoyed it, please give me that interaction down below. It really does help me grow. And do check out the instant gaming link as well. That does help support me down below. Super cheap codes for your favourite games. Otherwise, I will shut up and I will leave it there. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.